Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Chris Hayes. I'm the CEO of Impact Performance Solutions, and I'm going to be your tour guide for learning how to shift your culture. Now, I want to start off with this quote. Culture isn't a poster on the wall, it's what happens when no one is looking. I think that's a powerful thought. It reminds us that culture isn't about what we aspire to be, it's more about what we consistently do. Now, every company has a culture, whether it's the one you plan for or not, well, that's another story. Culture exists in every organization because it's shaped by the behaviors of all of your people. As the Shingo model teaches us, the sum of all behaviors defines the culture of an organization. So, what's the culture of your organization today? Is it the one you hoped for? Did you plan it? Or has it just kind of happened? To find the answer, you might want to take a look at some cultural attributes you might see in your workplace. For instance, are people engaged and collaborative, or is everyone kind of siloed in their own departments? Do teams take ownership, or does accountability feel a little bit like a game of hot potato? And what about feedback? Is it open and honest, or are tough conversations primarily avoided? These cultural attributes, good or bad, stem directly from behaviors. And as the Shingo model reminds us, principles inform ideal behaviors. Now, neuroscience helps us bridge the gap between principles and behaviors by showing us how to align actions and how the brain naturally works. Now, I like to think of culture kind of like a big giant iceberg. The values and the beliefs are what's underwater. They're deep, they're powerful, and invisible to most people. But behaviors, well, those are the parts that are sticking out of the water that everyone can see. No matter how polished that mission statement or those values are that you stuck up on the wall, it's the behaviors, the day-to-day actions that define the real culture. And here's the good news. If you focus on shaping visible behaviors, you can start to influence what's beneath the surface, those values and those beliefs. Small intentional behaviors tend to ripple out to influence the broader culture, but here's the challenge. How do you make those behaviors stick? And more importantly, how do you intentionally shift your culture using those behaviors? Now, behaviors aren't random. They're shaped by how the brain processes and responds to the environments that we create. And if we want to shift culture, we need to understand how the brain works and how to design environments that encourage the right behaviors. Our brain operates through three key principles that play a critical role in behavior, and this is a simplified version. The prefrontal cortex, right about here, often referred to as the brain CEO, is really responsible for all of your decision making, your planning, and any emotional regulation. It helps us think critically, evaluate options, and to actually act thoughtfully. However, it's pretty sensitive to stress, so when it gets overwhelmed, it becomes less effective, making it harder to stay focused. The second system is the limbic system, which is known as the emotional core of the brain. It includes two things called the amygdala and the hypothalamus. The amygdala is the brain's alarm system, if you will, constantly scanning for threats to see if anything's wrong. It triggers what you guys know as the fight or flight response, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. Well, this is really helpful in emergencies. If you were being chased by a bear, it can really derail decision-making and collaboration in the workplace. The hypothalamus works alongside that amygdala, activating the body's stress response. It raises your heart rate, it raises your blood pressure, and allows for other physiological changes needed for action in cases of those emergencies. The third system is the reward system, and this is the system driven by a chemical called dopamine that reinforces positive behaviors and creates motivation. When someone feels included, safe, valued, dopamine gets released, encouraging those behaviors to be repeated. When environments foster safety, inclusion, clarity, the prefrontal cortex stays in control where it's supposed to be, allowing us to operate at our best. When the environment gets stressful, though, or has ambiguity, or you're feeling excluded, the limbic system takes over. It hijacks everything and pulls us into a reactive state. This understanding is essential if you want cultural transformation. To intentionally shift culture, we need to align workplace behaviors with how the brain naturally works. And I'm going to introduce you to something called the brain model. The brain model provides a practical framework for designing environments that foster behaviors that we want to see. It focuses on 5 different domains: belonging, resilience, autonomy, I for insight, and N for nurturing. We're going to go ahead and explore each one of these domains in details, and I'm going to show you how they connect to both the neuroscience as well as the Shingo principles. Belonging is about connection. Belonging is about fostering emotional connections that make people feel valued as members of a team. Think about the Shingo principle of respect every individual, for instance. This principle, it drives behaviors that foster inclusion, like listening actively and acknowledging other people's contributions. When people feel they belong, their brains release dopamine, reinforcing those positive connections and engagement. Resilience is the brain's ability to recover from stress. Resilience is about how well people or teams can bounce back from the bad things that happen. The Shingo principle of embrace scientific thinking, I think, aligns really well with resilience because it encourages experimentation, it encourages learning from failure, and it gives us a mindset of continuous improvement. Leaders who foster resilience cultivate environments where teams can analyze setbacks without fear of blame and focus on solutions instead. Autonomy is about control. It's one of the strongest drivers of motivation that there is. When people feel in control of their work, their brain's reward system is activated. The principle of create value for the customer supports autonomy by encouraging ownership. When people see how their direct work impacts the customer, they're more likely to make decisions and take initiatives that support the customer. Insight focuses on reducing ambiguity and providing clarity. Ambiguity triggers the amygdala, creating stress and disengagement, right? Clear expectations and transparent communication, they're going to calm the brain down and they're going to enable focus and productivity. The Shingo principle of create constancy of purpose aligns well here. It emphasizes an unwavering clarity of why the organization exists, where it's going, and how's it going to get there. This clarity enables people to align their actions, adapt, and innovate with confidence. Nurturing focuses on growth and learning. Learning activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine when we master a new skill or we achieve some sort of goal. The Shingo principles of continuous improvement reinforces nurturing behaviors, celebrating small wins or investing in personal development and encouraging innovation. They all create a culture of growth. I see it this way. The brain model and the Shingo principles are really 2 sides of the same coin. The Shingo principles provide a foundation for ideal behaviors, while the brain model explains how to design your environments so that they align with how the brain naturally works. And together, they're going to help you shape a culture that's not just aspirational, but actionable as well. Now let's take the brain model and explore how to use it in a practical, actionable way to build your culture. For each of the domains, I'm going to share just a couple of examples of behaviors that you could consider implementing in your organization, and I'll also include a brain tip to make each one of those more impactful. Again, I'm only giving you 2. There are so many others that you could consider. Reach out if you want more ideas. Let's start with belonging, though. Belonging is about creating a sense of connection, remember, where people feel included and part of something bigger than themselves. In order to do that, you may want to consider maybe starting a peer recognition program. Create a system where employees can recognize each other for their contributions and the teamwork that they have. The brain tip here would be to tie recognition to your principles. When people are recognized for demonstrating a principle, maybe respect for every individual, it creates clarity around what living that principle looks like in action. And this makes it easier for others to emulate the behavior and strengthens the sense of connection to shared values. The second example is facilitating cross-functional team projects where employees from different departments work together on shared goals. For example, let's say we have operations and marketing collaborate to improve our customer onboarding process. If you want to do this one, the brain tip would be that maybe during those collaborations, create some opportunities for informal social bonding, maybe a kickoff lunch or an end of project celebration. Neuroscience shows that shared positive experiences strengthen social bonds and enhance belonging by associating teamwork with reward pathways inside of our brains. Now let's move to resilience, which is about managing stress and bouncing back from those challenges. The first example is conducting what I call a setback and solution debrief after you have challenging projects or initiatives. This is where the team is going to reflect on what went wrong, what they learned, and how they can improve. Brain tip here, maybe end each session with a forward-looking question like, what are we going to do different next time? This is going to shift the brain's focus from the stress of the failure to the opportunity for growth. The second example I'll give you is creating stress reduction protocols during high pressure periods. You may never have seen anything like this, but they're cool. For example, you could set clear guidelines for quiet time during peak deadlines, where there's no emails and no meetings or anything like that, so employees can focus on critical tasks without those distractions. Everybody thinks everything is important. The brain tip here is that leadership really needs to announce and reinforce these protocols consistently to make them predictable. Predictability reduces the amygdala activation, and it's going to help employees stay calm and productive. All right, on to autonomy, which fosters control and ownership over one's work. The first example is letting employees design their own goals within broader organizational goals. Let me give you an example. Let's say that management has thrown down 3 departmental goals to you. You may want to consider letting your individuals create 2 personal goals of their own that align to those higher level goals. If you're going to do this, the brain tip is to provide feedback on their goals to ensure they're still aligned while maintaining their ownership. This is going to foster motivation by balancing autonomy and clarity. The second example is delegating decision-making either to individuals themselves or to maybe small teams. Let them take ownership of specific tasks or processes. Micromanagement is not fun for anybody. Brain tip here, make sure you offer structure if you do that. The brain responds best to freedom within clear boundaries. So make sure the parameters for their decision-making are well defined. All right, next is insight. Insight reduces ambiguity and provides clarity. When people have clear expectations and they understand what their roles are, they can focus and perform better. The first example I'll give you is simply using dashboards to make sure that your team progress and goals are very visible. A simple visual can go a super long way in providing clarity. The brain tip here, and you're probably already using this in some way, is to use color-coded indicators like green means we're on track and red means, oh heck, we're in trouble. The brain processes visuals way faster than text, reducing uncertainty and ambiguity. The second example is to schedule what I call clarity huddles, weekly clarity huddles. And this is where leaders update priorities and answer questions about shifting goals. The brain tip here, and it's not just for here, but any meeting of any type, is use simple, consistent structures. For instance, no longer than 20 minutes, very specific agenda, those kind of things. Neuroscience shows that predictable formats reduce ambiguity and free our cognitive resources, which is going to enable the brain to focus on the execution piece, which is what we want. Finally, let's talk about nurturing, which encourages growth and continuous improvement. Here are a couple of behaviors that support it. The first example is celebrating milestones, and that means big or small milestones. For instance, recognize when somebody completes maybe a challenging certification they've been working on or achieves some sort of project goal. The brain tip here is to make sure that recognition is immediate. neuroscience tells us the brain's reward system responds best if you have timely reinforcement. So don't wait weeks or months to celebrate something. The brain doesn't like it. The second example is creating a growth spotlight in team meetings where maybe employees share a skill they've developed or a challenge they've overcome. This could be personal or professional. The brain tip here is to add maybe a personal question after they tell you about it, like, hey, what inspired you to pursue this skill? This is going to connect growth to personal meaning, which is going to strengthen the motivational impact. Now, these examples show how small intentional behaviors aligned with the brain model, how they can create big shifts in your culture. So I'm going to leave you with this. Culture isn't built in a day. It's shaped by small, consistent behaviors. And if you want a good culture, you're going to need lots of ideal behaviors. When we align neuroscience with principles like those in the Shingo model, we create cultures that thrive. And it all starts with the habits we reinforce every single day. So I'll end by asking you this. What's one small behavior you could start reinforcing today? Thank you so much for listening. Now go out there and shape you some awesome culture.